All right. Boy, we had people waiting for this to start, and I actually almost started on time. Howdy to Rick. Howdy to Cal. um, okay. This is gonna be funny because if I do get around to editing this afterwards, there's no disguising. Every now and then when I use this studio, I like doing it because you can see if you can look past the ring light. Back in the distance, well, actually, right behind the ring light, that's NRG Stadium. So right behind my gargantuan head, which is right behind the ring light. Oh no! Fucking mood light. So it's gonna be a good game. We're gonna tear it to them versus the Steelers. We're damn it, I'm not drunk. I rushed to get a few of the videos I want to show tonight done because the Astros are about to play. And to put the Astros formula very concretely, if they just win the rest of their games, they're fine. If they win 2 more games, they're fine. Don't worry about the Mariners. Don't worry about the Rangers. So I'm going to get started here in a second. And I know we'll probably get some Steelers fans tonight because I flew in from Cleveland today, actually. I was up visiting some family, and there were a bunch of Yinzers on there. I got to say, I do enjoy teams like the Steelers when they come to town, especially when we do the pregame show out by the Boulevard down between the Astrodome and the NRG. Teams like the Steelers, you see a lot of like old-time Steelers jerseys, but you also see your Kenny Pickett's. You see your Minka Fitzpatrick's. You don't see a whole lot of why am I blanking on his name right now? Son of a bitch. I'm not going to look at the depth chart because I'm blanking on a name that I want to say, but I'll say it later. So here's the thing. Seth Light. Yes. They're conspiring against me. Okay. This is what I want to address first off before we really get into some of the video I want to show. I fear for CJ's life tomorrow. Deculus at LT is a terrifying thought. It is. And I don't know if Deculus is going to go into the game as the full-time starter. For any Steelers fans that are joining us, because I know the algorithm will bring you here, look, you guys have been shouting about how, hey, this Highsmith guy is awesome too, and he is. He's really good. I've got some Highsmith film in here that I want to show for everybody. And for Texans fans, know that TJ Watt plays almost exclusively on the left side, so he'll be facing George Fant. George Fant has been better than a lot of us would have expected after a very rocky training camp, but it's not the ideal of having Titus Howard in there. On the left side, the Texans will be playing their third string potentially tackle after Josh Jones was injured, after Laramie Tunsil was injured. Then we have Austin Deculus, who didn't look great during training camp. Big guy, went to LSU, from Houston originally. Seems like he's working his butt off, but he's just got some work to do. He's not all that athletic. But they also signed John Christian, who has been with the Texans before and also played for the Dolphins. I don't know how much game time he got with the Dolphins with Mike McDaniel, but he's been in the system, so he might have some familiarity with, obviously Bobby Slowick and McDaniel are going to be somewhat different, but a lot of the terminology, concepts, and things like that should be similar. So I'm wondering if we see a rotation immediately, depending on what kind of shape John Christian is. And other than that, a whole lot of just flat out scheming to get rid of the ball quickly, which of course the Steelers will be ready for and have their own answers to that. And then a lot of, using the tight ends, using the fullbacks, using the running backs, and getting as creative as possible. The one good thing, at least, is that this is early in the season. So when you're facing a really good pass rush by the Steelers, whatever little gimmicks or gadgetry you want to use to try to scheme some protection, then the Steelers haven't seen that much film on it. So, but yeah, it's okay. It's okay to fear for CJ's life. Let me get started on this. I really want to focus on CJ for a little bit, because obviously we've all seen the growth over the course of 3 weeks, and I've gotten really almost like incredulously excited about it, because you don't see rookies improve at the same trajectory that he's been improving. So obviously I'm biased, and I wanted to go out and check around the league and see exactly what other people that I respect, not hot take artists necessarily, maybe I'm not sure. Orlovsky's not a hot take artist, but I can tell the people at ESPN are trying like hell to turn him into one, but he's fighting it. He's fighting the good fight. Every now and then he slips in that Zach Wilson's going to be better than this guy or something like that. But for the most part, he's I feel like I can trust that he's doing his research and everything. So let's start with some of the film of just a couple clips of people saying really nice things about CJ Stroud that back up what I had been seeing with my own eyes. This, if I remember correctly, when I threw it together in a mad frenzy to try to be able to watch a bunch of this Astros game, this should be Dan Orlovsky, then JT O'Sullivan, who's a longtime backup quarterback in the NFL, who now runs a channel on YouTube called the QB School, which is just awesome. And then I think I threw a little Ben Solak in there, another little nerdy little dude who loves football. He's super smart. He's either a 37-year-old teenager or a teenager with 6 kids. I don't like whatever it is. I can't quite figure it out, but I really enjoy his commentary. So we'll start off with him and then throw in a little JT O'Sullivan long form. Let's see.
He's the best in the pocket mover since Joe Burrow came into the NFL as a rookie.
Wow. That is as good as it gets from anyone.
Unquestionably, the best start of the 3 belongs to CJ Stroud with the Texans.
Unquestionably from my geriatric 14-year-old, from my prepubescent 69-year-old. I love that kid. Wait until I show you the clip later. But JT O'Sullivan was really blown away by his anticipation, like his ability to throw with anticipation, not to mention scanning the field and everything. But it's been cool to watch JT O'Sullivan because he breaks them down every week, the rookie quarterbacks he has been, at least when they play. And a couple of things that he pointed out in week 1 and in the preseason with JT's been really able to see the growth. So he's been right there along, watching every rep the entire time. And it's really cool. So here's JT O'Sullivan, just kind of with his synopsis at the end of a half-hour-long video. I will, at the end of this, I'll try to remember to link it below. If not, just go to the QB School on YouTube. And he's really, if you're a coach, if you're a player, whatever, if you just want to learn more about football, he's he's awesome. I really enjoy him. I disagree with him sometimes when he talks about the line play, but that's to be expected.
From the quarterback position, CJ Stroud, I mean, the anticipation and the accuracy for a rookie, for a week 3 rookie, is really off the charts. I love seeing it. And they are really some impressive throws. They're not just like dink and dunk anticipation slants or little rub routes. These are down the field throws. That throw on the backside of the drift post where he resets his feet, moves in the pocket, and throws with anticipation on a deep out, that is as good as it gets from anyone. It's so much fun to watch, and that's not the only anticipation throw in this film. So the fact that he's doing that and they're winning on the road in the league, I mean, I'm so excited to see more.
So look, that's the really cool thing. Let me get fast forward a little bit, and then Dan Orlovsky will show his thing. That throw right there to Robert Woods. The really cool stat I saw from Robert Woods was the percentage of his receptions that have been for first downs. John Harrison has it on HoustonTexans.com, but it's kind of crazy, but it matches the eyeball test, right? Like Robert Woods has turned into that. The safety blanket that we were all hoping Dalton Schultz would be. That's Robert Woods. Robert Woods is the safety blanket right now. All 3 of those guys have over 15 receptions, the top 3 receivers, not Dalton Schultz, but the top 3 receivers do. It was Robert Woods, and then Nico Collins took over, and then Tank Dell last week. So it's one of those types of deals where I think just based on game plan and whatnot, we'll see who it is this week. Pass protection obviously is vital to any of that happening. And I'll get to TJ Watt and I'll get to Alex Highsmith later on. But right now it's all about enjoying TJ for a little bit. Let's see. Best throw, yeah. There's another couple good ones. Starting, yes, JT O'Sullivan, starting quarterback for the Frankfurt Galaxy. Let me tell you one thing about backup quarterbacks. I love them because a lot of times the guys that make it a long time in the league as backups make it because of their brains more so than their arms. They just teams either want a really good scout team quarterback or they want a guy that, you know, kind of like Jason Garrett, that can come in and maybe win 50% of the games if he has to play. But then they've also, by virtue of their mediocrity, they've been in a bunch of different systems. And you know, they've been little gym rats the whole time. If they make it a long time, he played like 10 years in the NFL, I believe. They know a lot of stuff. They've got a large, like a breadth of knowledge, whereas a lot of starters have only been in one system and only know one or two ways to do it. So I really enjoy like guys like him and other backups that do it. Let's see. Woods equals third down conversion. Yeah. He's Dalton Schultz left his hands in Dallas. Yes. I like doing these at night. I've got a better sense of humor about it. Okay, so here's a little bit more Orlovsky. I think Orlovsky, if I recall properly, I think Orlovsky did a couple plays. There we go.
The best in the pocket mover since Joe Burrow came into the NFL as a rookie. Wow. The operational space. We knew he was the best pocket passer. Look at this pocket movement. He almost gets run into. So just navigating that and not fumbling the football is a huge deal. So he's trying to see the middle of the field, like who's where, okay? And as he comes off of number one and gets to number two, he's got a ton of space that he's got.
Okay, so that throw to Mechie, I know, like, it's funny. People watching that who haven't been watching the Texans probably look at it and think, like, all right, what's the big deal? He checked down to the guy, and Mechie ends up running for a first down. No. You don't understand. You got to understand. It seemed like at times our quarterbacks have been allergic to checkdowns. I mean, it took Deshaun a while to learn that it was okay to just check down to the running back. And then it also at various times in the last couple of years, it seemed, and honestly, in week one, it seemed like the offensive coordinator really wasn't all that worried about having either hot routes or short options on plays. What we're discovering with Bobby Slowick as offensive coordinator is that I think in week one and then going on into week two a little bit, it was more a matter of the young receivers not quite yet really getting it. When it was time to get hot, running backs and everything, getting the timing. The tight ends are the ones where one of you guys mentioned the other last week that, the tight ends really got to start watching George Kittle. And I know they are watching a lot of 49ers film, but man, Kittle does such a good job of hitting his blocking assignments, making it look like he's run blocking and then releasing, and getting the hell downfield. And he's got such attention to detail with it. It's one of the best things that Kittle does. But he does anyway. So the movement within the pocket there too, especially CJ just very calm, cool, and collected as the pocket's collapsing, and him genuinely checking down his reads and going to Mechie there was nice to see.
Manipulate. This is my favorite play, though. He's going to pull the backside guard. You're trying to influence those linebackers, okay, to get this ball to the middle of the field. Now, as he goes through that play fake, pay attention to his bait. He sees that those backers didn't buy it. The inroad is not. Okay,
yeah, so this is the same throw to Robert Woods. I cut it up a little bit because he spent quite a while. And it's not that I don't want to hear Orlovsky talk. It's that I don't want the live stream to be shut down for copyright violation.
Go Collins. Watch his feet now. His feet never come together. He's got a subtlety, just quickly 6 inches move away from that internal pressure. Now get the ball out on time and look at that freaking throw.
Yes. Okay, so that's a crazy thing here. We talk about things that he's improved from week 1 to 2. His feet, especially, like you see how it looks like he's about to deadlift 500 pounds. Like the entire time he stays. The
inroad is not.
Sorry, Dan.
Not there to Nico Collins. Watch his feet now.
So, week 1, he was clicking his heels a little bit, or am I thinking of the preseason? But definitely in the preseason. And in week 1, too, his footwork wasn't as crisp, and he didn't look like he was as stable. And now, like, he's getting to the point where and this is in a muddy pocket when it would be easy for you to forget all that stuff. It's really cool. Bobby Slowick, we'll play for those of you that stick around as I compete against the Astros idiotically. Let's just turn the Astros, turn the volume off, and then there we go.
His feet never come together. He's got a subtlety, just quickly 6 inches move away from that internal pressure. Now get the ball out on time and look at that freaking throw.
You can get a lot out of 6 inches of movement. That's what I That's what I say constantly. Let's see. So I like honestly some of the movement within the pocket, adjusting to the blitz. I've seen different numbers. I've seen conflicting numbers about how good he's been under pressure, and it's weird. And a lot of it comes down to, I think, just the different ways. This is why football is like immune to some analytics, because everything is so subjective. So in some regards, he's responded really well to pressure. In other regards, he's still struggled against pressure. But overall, his ability to maneuver within a muddy pocket, for him to complete balls with free rushers in his face, with pressure in his face, whether it's a blitz or not, I think that's been better than advertised. So like no complaints whatsoever there. Again, has he faced something quite like the Steelers? That's a tricky question, because I mean the Steelers they'll give up some yardage, you know. They're not. It's funny. I've seen a few Steelers fans in a couple of the videos talk about how the steel curtain's coming to town. And I feel like the old school Steelers fans probably get offended when young casual Steelers fans talk about like this version of the Steelers defense as a steel curtain defense. This is like, it's better than Ready Shades for sure, but it's not steel. It's like bauxite or something, because they give up a huge chunk of yardage to the Raiders last week, but they also forced Garoppolo into 3 turnovers, 3 interceptions. They also concussed Garoppolo. They just flat out get after it. This is what. So one part of the Steelers that you can count on is that even when they're not at peak Steeler form, whether it's Mean Joe Green, Greg Lloyd, T.J. Watt, Alex Highsmith, Kevin Green, whatever, they're gonna have guys that can rush the passer, and they do have that right now. And that's why CJ's ability to avoid turnovers is a big deal. It's always a big deal, but tomorrow, that's the very strength of the Steelers right now. Their run game isn't clicking the way they'd really like it to. The passing game took a step forward last week, but Pickett still throws interceptions, you know, so we'll see. I think the biggest issue, a lot of it is just Matt Canada. And I think Steelers fans agree with me that like Matt Canada, sometimes he's either the smartest guy in the room or the dumbest, because when you do things that nobody else is doing, or you sometimes do things that don't seem to make sense, you've either got a much better idea of what you're doing or you're just completely out to lunch. And I think Steelers fans and at least sports radio hosts feel like it's the latter. Just fine for us. If he gets fired if the Texans can get Matt Canada fired, don't worry. Matt Canada's contract is guaranteed, and everything will be fine for him. Let's see, who did I have? Okay, so next I've got Daniel Jeremiah and Bucky Brooks, and the third guy who's with him. But Daniel Jeremiah and Bucky Brooks, I think most of you probably know, former scouts who now work for NFL Network, and they're both blown away by CJ Stroud as well.
The S2, by the way.
Oh yeah, some of you heard this already. He says RIP the S2. We'll play it again in a second.
Thoughts and prayers to the S2 test.
We'll talk about the S2 cognition test.
CJ Stroud is as good as we've talked about. He is as advertised. And I know during the run-up to the draft, there was a lot of conversation about other stuff that kind of clouded his evaluation.
RIP the S2, by the way. Thoughts and prayers to the S2 test.
Yeah, DJ, like all that stuff clouded. I'm telling you, when I'm watching him, this dude looks like a 10-year vet in the pocket. They have 4 offensive linemen missing. The Jaguars are trying to heat him up, and he never flinches. We talked about in the run-up to the draft about him being maybe the most natural passer and thrower. It is effortless to the point where when you talk to the coaches for the Jaguars, they're like, man, this dude he is legit. Like, we better get him now, because in a couple years, he is going to own it.
Okay, so that last part about the Jaguars noticing that, I think from the rest of the interview with Bucky, I think he was talking about what the Jaguars had seen going into the Jaguars game. It sounded like he was talking to the Jaguars coaches before the game, but and you know, he took another step forward in that game. I think Bucky said he's as advertised. I was talking to Clint Sterner about this, and I feel like he's better than advertised. so far. And I know if you're not a Texans fan and you haven't been watching the Texans, or if you're a Steelers fan and you're hearing that, it sounds like, gushing homerism. And that's why, like, honestly, I went out like on a quest to find negative opinions about CJ Stroud this week, just to check my own biases. And I couldn't find any, other than people just, flat out were just talking normal sports trash. I think compared to Deshaun Watson, I'm not trying to bash on Deshaun or anything. They're different types of quarterbacks. But with Deshaun early on, I think it was much more about his legs. It was about his improvisational ability. It was about a lot of things that showed a lot of potential. And you could tell early on that Deshaun he's got kind of a freakish sixth sense on understanding the flow of a defense and where coverage is going. And he's got a really good sense of anticipation too. Deshaun just shows a certain level of polish that I think it took until maybe his third year for Deshaun to do a lot of the more polished stuff that CJ's doing. So that's why I'm so excited about it. That's why a lot of people are excited about it. Does he have the same athleticism as Deshaun? No, but he's shown, I guess that's the other huge question, his ability to make plays outside the pocket that we knew was there. And, Ohio State fans would scream at you like it wasn't just a Georgia game, but it was a lot. It was a lot in the Georgia game versus an incredibly good defense, and like in some ways, if you adjust for level of competition, the Georgia defense, because they were like, no matter how many of those guys end up being good pros or not, they were so head and shoulders above other defenses that when you look at it from a quarterback's perspective, like if he's fleeing that pocket, those guys out on the field are just like a marauding group of barracudas, so it was impressive. That's why people were so impressed with what he did versus Georgia. But then he's done the same thing in the NFL. Like he's extended that on. And I would say compared to Trevor Lawrence, when I watched Trevor Lawrence last week, Trevor Lawrence, sometimes when he's pulling the ball down, he's dropping his eyes too. And he's not looking downfield, but he's also looking hesitant as a runner, where CJ just very calm, cool, and collected about all that stuff. We got to keep getting the offensive line better, because otherwise, like that can get beat out of you. I'd prefer it not to get beat out of him. Here's more Bucky and Daniel Jeremiah and the other. Somebody tell me who the other guy is. Okay, let's see. That's what we got there. Johnny Lambert, tell me what you're SMHing about. If you're Jack Lambert's son, I want to congratulate you. No, you wouldn't be his son. You'd be like his grandson. But I want to tell you, I've got a Jack Lambert comparison that'll probably make you angry, but that is meant as a compliment to a Steelers player. But we'll talk about George Pickens later.
This is one thing in scouting. I think this is a good lesson in scouting. Every evaluation is an individual evaluation. We talk about in the past, don't scout the helmet. In other words, like don't just give a guy a grade because he's at a big school versus punishing a guy who's at a small school. But also don't grade a current player on the sins of a past player at the same position. They're all different. They're all unique. Yeah. You can't say the Ohio State quarterbacks, lump them up together and throw them in a barrel. He is so different than the other guys. He's different than Dwayne Haskins was coming out. He's different than Justin Fields was coming out.
Yeah, and oops.
It was the most.
Okay, so as far as those comparisons, and I think I did an entire video on the logical fallacies of Colin Cowherd one time because I was so sick of the don't draft an Ohio State quarterback shtick. Colin loves making generalizations about groups of people and then saying why they can't do something because of the group of people they belong to. And that's why Colin sometimes gets criticism for sometimes it extends beyond just alma maters. So it's a gross generalization based on a very small sample size. And I think it most crucially it ignores what Daniel Jeremiah was just talking about, which is that the Ohio State offense, like any offense, is going to change based on who that specific quarterback is. And like, I think we overly simplify sometimes what a system is, because it depends on what the quarterback driving the car is capable of doing with that car. So like AJ Foyt can do a lot more with a Honda than I can do with a Honda. It's still a Honda, but it's a whole different deal. And I think with CJ, they asked him to do a lot more at Ohio State, and they were able to do a lot more with him, in some respects. And then obviously Justin Fields has his own skills and different skill sets. So I just, if anything, just so we don't have to deal with that argument ever again, please, CJ, not because we're Texans fans, not for the good of America or anything else, but just please shut Colin Cowherd up this one instance, please.
Natural throwing session at the combine. I remember saying that, just specifically saying I've never.
Here, let me run that back a little bit. He was talking about, he had read his, Daniel had read his scouting report of CJ Stroud, and Daniel wasn't like trying to toot his own horn or anything. Like he's pretty honest about when he's right, when he's wrong. But he had a good scouting report on CJ Stroud.
He's different than Justin Fields was coming out. It was the most natural throwing session at the combine. I remember saying that, just specifically saying I've never seen a more natural throwing session. I've seen guys throw harder. I've seen guys throw farther. I've seen guys make more throws on the move. This was just, this ball requires this velocity and pace. He puts that velocity and pace on the ball. It requires this amount of loft. He puts that amount of loft on it. Buck, he's pure. He is a pure thrower, man.
Yeah. And I think I'll be honest. I'm like, I think one of the things that he has room for improvement on, maybe I'm crazy on this, or maybe my expectations were too high. I don't actually think his ball placement has been his strength. I think there's some of the more impressive stuff he's done hasn't. Now, look, don't get me wrong. Some of the throws to the sideline, some of the throws deep to Tank Dell, they've been exactly what Daniel Jeremiah has talked about. But I think the ball placement is real. I think he 100% is very, very good with his accuracy, but he's had some curiously misthrown footballs like that you wouldn't expect out of him, like even based on the preseason. And that's where I think there's still upside, even as other teams will make adjustments. There was a time last week when all the linebackers were caught in the line, and then they flew back into coverage, and CJ could have thrown a pick. Like, that stuff's gonna be there. And teams will start trying to exploit that as much as possible. But I think CJ is going to adjust to it. And I actually do think that his accuracy hasn't been as good as he's capable of over these last 3 weeks. So I would take a lot of the anticipation, the footwork, the accuracy on throws to the sideline, the ability to pick up blitzes and everything. All of those have actually been better than advertised. Whereas I think the accuracy is actually has been a little bit subpar by his standards. By his standards, okay? His standards. It's like when this is what happened. This is what used to happen in Seth's world. It's like when my brother would come home, and as long as he wasn't failing, my mom would like buy him ice cream and put his report card on the fridge and everything. And meanwhile, Seth with his A's was just sitting in his room by himself, listening to Aerosmith. My report card in the trash can. Nobody cared about Seth getting his A's. Damn it! That's where CJ is with his accuracy. I'm not going to commend him for B+ accuracy, because he's capable of much more.
He plays with, like, I would say, a calmness to his game that
quiet. He's real quiet.
Never speeds up, never does anything, whatever.
Yeah, that part. I had some film to go along with that. Again, Astros happened. Rangers are up 4-0 now. Okay, let's see. Okay, so I want to address this real quick since we're talking about the ball placement. Okay, the touchdown to Brevin was weird placement. Okay, that one I'll actually make an excuse for, because there was a free blitzer in his face, and that's something that I think he's improved on from week 1 to 3. Now, week 1, remember, one of those free rushers on a blitz was Jadeveon Clowney, so there's that. And that's what I wonder about with TJ Watt. I don't know if he's necessarily seen somebody quite like Jadeveon Clowney. He didn't see that guy in week 2 or 3. With TJ Watt, TJ's not freakishly big like that, but between Highsmith and TJ Watt, they can close ground really fast. They can win their pass rush real quickly. So bending the ball around a guy like that versus bending it around a blitzing defensive back, I think it was on the throw to Brevin Jordan, it's a little bit different. But he, like, weeks 1 and 2, weeks 1 especially, there were times where there was a blitz, and you could tell that CJ knew where to go with the ball, but either didn't trust himself or couldn't quite make the throw. We saw that in the preseason too. I think that got a lot better in week 2 and week 3. So that throw to Brevin Jordan, he had something in his face and it was a little bit behind him, but it also wasn't in danger of being an interception. So yeah, I'll give him, I want to say that was almost like good, bad ball placement, because that might have been just the only place he could squeeze it there. Ever since he said pause in the press conference the other day, I just keep catching myself saying all kinds of sexual stuff inadvertently. Let's say, one thing. No, I'm just joking about that. I'm not, it's not traumatic anymore. It never actually was all that traumatic, but. Oh yeah, here we go. Yeah, Ethan said he had somebody in his face. Yeah. I should be studying. So glad it says, yes, Daniel. Daniel, what are you studying for? I had the impression that Daniel was like, Daniel, I thought you were older than you are. Unless you're going back to school for something. All right, let's get the other, let's see. This is Ben Solak. So Ben Solak, who writes for The Ringer, and again, seems to be like, he's just like, he
never does anything, whatever.
Well, listen to Bucky for a second.
This is such.
Okay, so this is Ben Solak, who writes for The Ringer, and he is incredibly enthusiastic about football. And I think he's learned a lot just by taking tutorials and talking to coaches and everything. But he knows a lot about football. So I enjoy him because I think he gives a genuinely unbiased opinion. He's super excited about CJ Stroud.
Such a cool freaking throw. Set. Here's Nico Collins. You have a problem right here. Problem's name is Zaire Franklin. You can't, you either have to throw this ball over him or find a way to throw it in this window here between these two defenders. Watch Stroud. Watch Stroud pull Franklin a little bit with his eyes. Look at Franklin.
Look at Ben's face. Look at how happy he is.
And then Stroud throws right behind him. Like if Franklin doesn't move here, this is a pick. It is a ballsy throw, man. And just rips it over the middle of the field. That's a good throw.
I'm gonna do Ben Solak reaction videos because I like watching him react. The dude from The Ringer. Oh, hey Mike, what's up? It has infectious, beautiful quarterback play there. Chase Dan, you know what? I saw that pop up on my feed on Twitter, and I will look that up. Thank you. Who was that? Thank you, Michael. Appreciate it. Where's that? Chase Daniels. Okay. You can negate CJ and the Steelers D-liner blitz with quick, shorter in-stride passes. Let the receivers have a chance to get the yak or more. Yeah, ideally, hopefully. And the big question just is, all right, well, this is the beauty of it. Like, honestly, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, Dead Shred, but the beauty of it is the solution to a lot of this stuff like that is, all right, you start jumping those routes or you start popping guys back off into coverage, but you have this revelation that is Tank Dell that presents that constant deep threat. And it's really, really nice. Like that part, that's for real too. Like Tank Dell has just taken to coaching extremely well. Nico Collins, we knew could have had more opportunities last year. He had like a ridiculously low catch percentage, but with none of it because of drops. It was just there's a weird gap in he had not that many drops, but then also a low catch rate just because balls thrown to him were so errant. And that's not going to be an issue anymore with Nico Collins. I don't think we put the play in here. I don't think I put the play in here, but the one that Nico Collins dropped, that he was really upset about himself for, that wasn't perfect ball placement, but it was one of those things, again, kind of like the throw to Brevin Jordan. I think CJ was probably trying to err on the side of keeping it away from the other linebacker or safety that was coming over. Like Nico wasn't seeing throws consistently like that. So like he dropped that one. And it was one that he should have caught versus last year. I think there were a lot of times where even if it hit his hands, it wasn't necessarily the most catchable of balls. And as much as I don't want to defend Brandon Cooks, we saw Brandon Cooks suffer that from that same thing at the beginning of last year. He had a lot of drops, but it was hard to figure, okay, a lot of those were on balls that were down below his knees or off to his side. They hit his hands, but it wasn't with the same level of accuracy and it wasn't just accuracy, it's catchability, this catchable ball that he throws. Good week for quick checkdowns. Maybe Dalton has a big role this week. Yeah, that's boy, it would be really nice if Dalton. I mean, it's there, right? He had a touchdown last week. It was there. It was there for him. It's right. I know he can make that catch. I don't know. That's the thing that almost disturbs me more. There's times where I'm not sure he's quite on the right page or doing his assignment. And that I figure like, all right, well, some of that's just maybe, he's a guy that needs time in the system and everything. But just dropping that touchdown, it wasn't like it was the easiest catch in the world, but it was a freaking touchdown. And he blew the touchdown in training camp by not running the right route or not adjusting to the coverage the right way. It just, I don't know, man. I don't know. Here's D'Amico.
We have our hands full this week with Watt and Highsmith.
Nah, you got him.
Two, elite edge rushers in this league, cause a lot of problems for a lot of offenses. TJ's sack leader, pressure leader, so it's definitely going to have our attention.
After this, or maybe I put it here.
Yeah.
Okay. After D'Amico's press conference, I've got TJ Watt. I've got a reel of TJ Watt, and I've got a reel of Alex Highsmith. And I think the really important thing to note and that you'll see is that half their highlights are versus the run. So for a Texans team that's had way too many tackles for a loss offensively, that part makes me almost you can scheme to prevent those guys from killing your quarterback. And maybe, when you do that, it hurts your ability to go downfield, but at least you can keep things from turning into a complete disaster. It's hard to scheme against guys that are studs versus the run. It's that part's going to, especially when you've got one on either side. That's the really difficult part because you can't run away from either of them. D'Amico.
Pittsburgh and their organization with Coach Tomlin, you talk about a team that's always in the hunt, right? Very successful organization, consistent in their approach and how they do things. It's definitely a model for all NFL teams.
I put that in there just I put that in there just because as much as the Texans have tried to be New England South or did try to be New England South for a long time, I really did always get a sense just from, conversations with Mr. McNair over the years and interviews that he had done that the Steelers were probably the organization that he really wanted to be. And I wouldn't be surprised if Caserio has had conversations regarding the Steelers and the way they've done things, because they've done it forever. They had, over the last however many years and 3 head coaches, they had that one lull there in the 80s, and that was about it from the 70s on until now. And maybe now is going to be another lull. But they did it, without a whole lot of flash, doing it, somewhat fiscally conservative, and by scouting the right kinds of guys. I do think that the Steelers maybe have had more of an appetite for guys who are like teetering on the brink of sociopathy than the Texans have had. Maybe that'll change. There's a way to manage it. A city like Pittsburgh is small, and they can take care of those guys if they see them start to stray. They grab them and they embrace them. They go down and they have a Permane Brothers sandwich. Texas, Houston's a little bit bigger, more space. Hard to let those guys run free. Let's see. The shit curtain. The zinc curtain. No lie, Seth is looking excited. I hope the Texans don't let us down. Okay, we're going to get something about that here in a little bit after one of these next D'Amico answers about Mike Tomlin. But as far as letting us down, all right, what would a letdown for tomorrow be? I think a letdown for tomorrow, like obviously a loss is a letdown. If they came out and played defensively the way they did in week 2, I'd be upset. That was a little bit of a surprise. The missed tackles in week 2 were really bad. They weren't awesome last week. I think the presence of Eric Murray, that's right, I said Eric Murray. The presence of Eric Murray last week, as opposed to, going out after the first quarter in week 2, that was big. That made a difference. And then the really, really big difference was Jimmy Ward. And Jimmy Ward, for the most part, keeping guys in line, except for potentially one miscommunication in coverage. With the group. And that wasn't necessarily Jimmy Ward's fault, but Jimmy Ward is a good safety, will take responsibility for any kind of mental error with somebody because you got to get everybody right. But also just with kind of being an intimidating presence over the middle. Jalen Petrie is back. And I think I'm a little nervous that Jalen Petrie is going to have so much pent up energy that it ends up being an aggressive penalty of some sort. And that'll be fun to see as long as it doesn't hurt us, but it's going to be a level of ferocity out there that I don't think we've been able to see because of the injuries of Jimmy Ward and Jalen Petrie. So having both those guys out there together, and Eric Murray, Eric Murray gets a lot of flack really just because he was brought onto this team by B.O. Beasterby, and it was a weird contract. It was a miscast, and there were misplaced expectations in a lot of ways. But he does have value as a football player, and it's nice to see him out there as opposed to guys who are behind him for a reason. I don't even remember putting the Brevin Jordan thing up there. Hold on a second. I'll get to that later. All right. More D'Amico Ryans from his press conference earlier this week. I don't think we did was there a Friday press conference that I missed? I would be fine if they don't do the Friday press conference anymore. They're generally useless.
We'll do whatever it takes up front to make sure we're protecting.
Yeah, okay. Protection.
Right, he's locked in on the details of what he's asked to do when it comes to the route running, to the depth, right?
Okay, he's talking about Tank Dell here. Let me pull this back a little bit. I'll talk about the offense. I've talked about the offensive line some, but we can talk about it later. So again, this should be him responding to a question about Tank Dell.
We'll do whatever it takes up front to make sure we're protecting.
He'll do whatever it takes up front.
Right, he's locked in on the details of what he's asked to do when it comes to the route running, to the depth, right, the angles of where he's running. He's locked in on the details. He's prepared, and it shows on Sundays when he goes out there. He's playing fast, right? As a rookie, he's playing fast. He's not hesitating.
Yeah, and I think that can't be overstated how important it is for him, who I think I saw one of you earlier mention about how much Tank Dell lines up on the outside. Yeah, vast majority of his snaps have been on the outside. He's not a slot receiver. I think I saw that same person say something about Nico's ability to play inside. Yeah, the big inside, the big dude playing slot is a fun thing that's happened over the past decade that can be a nightmare for run after the catch. And it's cool to see them have these 3 different types of receivers like that. It's what you always want, right? You want to compliment a guys. You got Nico Collins, big, rangy, catch radius guy, but strong, can run after the catch. Robert Woods, Johnny on the spot, go-to guy when you need a first down. And then Tank Dell, who obviously is a deep threat, but can also do it over the middle. But the big thing really is in this offense, when it's executed properly, everything's very precise. When Tank Dell exposed that blown coverage for that huge gain in the first quarter last week, CJ hit that ball right on the landmark, which is the hash there. And it was, on that play and then on the big play later on too, Tank had to make adjustments, but it was also partly on that first big play, CJ hit the landmark and Tank Dell knew where the landmark was, on a route that had to be altered because they saw what the coverage was. And then the second big play, Tank Dell had to whirl back around because that ball I think was thrown a little bit inside, but that's another one where, man, you're wide open. The ball's not exactly where you expect it to be. And that's where everything can go wrong because there's just too much time. There's too much. Your heart starts to race because you get that gold fever. And that part was really, really cool too. But his ability to be a water bug and to get in and out of breaks super fast, it's really exciting. There's so many. And I don't. There's just so many small guys in the league now. It's just not the big deal that it used to be. It just isn't. I mean, like the fact that the NFL finally adopted a lot of college stuff where the multiple wide receiver stuff just flat out makes it easier to do a lot of the fun stuff. And you can't just physically bludgeon people like you could before. And also you're also not allowed to physically bludgeon people anymore. That's another big part of it. If Tank Dell were to play, in an era of football leading up until like 2011 or 2012, it's a whole different deal. But I'm not worried about the size at all with him. Knock on wood. Okay. Dumbass. Let's see. Oh, I did it, didn't I? Don't worry. It's just a live stream. Accept the messiness.
Relentless mindset that those guys bring.
Okay, he's talking about Pittsburgh there. Let's get up to... Oh, there's George Pickens. Okay, so he answers a question about George Pickens.
Big physical offensive line.
They have a big offensive line. I don't know how physical they are, okay?
And they have to bank a lot of reps, so it takes time.
Oh, the linebacker. Okay. I'm glad I didn't skip over that. Because the linebackers are, as much as I've been gushing about CJ, I've got some concerns about the non-Blake Cashman linebackers. Here we go, linebackers.
Yeah, the linebackers are growing. They're young players. Henry, his first time, running the show, I thought he did really good with the communication. Thought Christian played better, just flying around, playing faster, making some physical tackles. Then Blake stepping in there, making some big-time plays, attacking the football. So collectively as a group, thought that was their best outing versus Jacksonville. Just looking for them to continue to improve as the season goes along, right? It's a new defense for a lot of guys, new techniques that they're learning, and they have to bank a lot of reps, so it takes time. But I'm excited to see their growth and improvement.
Okay, this is one... All right, this is one where I've got to try to put my faith in D'Amico, the linebackers coach, and remember, okay, Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw were not finished products when they showed up. Fred Warner is just a freak of nature, though, too. I mean, like D'Amico would be the first to tell you, and it's not like he created Fred Warner or anything, but Henry To'oTo'o made an improvement from week 2 to 3. I think Christian Harris has improved in some ways, but I'll take D'Amico's word when he says that there's a lot of new stuff that they're asking them to do, and that they need reps and time in the system. I mean, there's a lot of times with those guys where they're taking bad angles. They're not anticipating blocks that they're going to get. There's some things like sometimes when they've got their eyes on their coverage responsibilities and they end up, not recognizing run or what have you. I think that stuff's going to get better. To'oTo'o, I think he's going to really have to be nails when it comes to taking the proper angles, to doing everything the right way. I think he shows a real intelligence and aptitude for understanding the coverages, but he needs more reps there. I also found the first part of this answer kind of funny. Tell me whether this was just him maybe having a little bit of a miscommunication with the person asking the question, or was this a tell about how D'Amico actually feels about the linebackers?
Yeah, the linebackers are growing. They're young players.
I don't know. Next one. This might be when he starts talking about George Pickens.
Yeah, for us at the linebacker spot, when it comes to this offense, it's going to start with the run game, right? And we have to stop the run. They have big physical offensive line. They want to lean on you. They want to control the game. So we have to, be ready to get off of blocks and make plays. Strong tackles, really good backs. Both backs are really good backs, strong backs. They run the ball hard. So that's where our challenge will come in, and making sure we're swarming, we're tackling how we need to tackle, right, to stop the run game.
Okay, so obviously not about George Pickens, but Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren, the two running backs that are splitting time. And Najee Harris has not been spectacular, but if there are any, I see we got a couple Steelers fans, I think. Najee Harris can hit some big runs on you, and the Texans have shown an ability to let up a big run. This is the big thing. The run defense, the run defense is only going to be so good. I think that between the defensive tackles and the linebackers, they've got some weaknesses up the middle there. I thought the defensive tackles did a better job last week of just at least trying to sink their hips and recognize when they're getting combo blocked. The linebackers, they do have a tough task as young linebackers, and they're trying to learn this game. They're trying to learn the NFL. They're trying to learn their role in this defense, but they're also in a scheme where the defensive linemen are encouraged to get the hell upfield, and that sometimes it's not picture perfect. It's not textbook. So that's a lot different than playing behind a 345-pound run stuffer that's just flat out going to give you a really clear picture of everything. So that's the part that, like, if there's any coach that can help get them right, it's going to be D'Amico, but it might end up being over the course of a few weeks still. And that's where this Steelers rushing offense has not been awesome so far. The Texans got to be sure they're not a get right game for them. And on the flip side of that, that's where CJ and the offense got to get it going in case it does turn into some kind of a semblance of a shootout. You just want to be able to be sure that the Steelers can't just play clock control and control the game with the run game. So Najee Harris, I'm sure, and obviously with Jaylen Warren and whatever the competitive environment is there, those guys are hungry. Those guys are hungry for some big runs.
When you look at the way you guys have played the secondary so far this year, how prepared do you feel for any challenge, including this one with Jordan?
Okay, that was Aaron Wilson asking something about something.
Yeah, Pickens is a big-time playmaker. You turn on the tape, he pops off the tape, right? Big-time, explosive playmaker. So, we have our challenges there.
All right, and then I was gonna do a nice, well-produced video and everything before I ran out of time and Astros playoffs happened. So, this is what I was gonna do. I was gonna put this as a VO. That's what we call it in the biz, everybody. But Pickens, honestly, like, I like watching Pickens play. I like the comparison I was gonna make earlier was like he's like a Jack Lambert with hand-eye coordination. Like, he's just got a nastiness to him. But he also gets, he must talk a lot of smack, because I see a lot of defensive backs really try to dump him down at the end of plays. Either that or because they know that Pickens is going to try to physically intimidate them. This is the big test this week. He's had over 75 yards rushing the last receiving the last couple weeks. He just doesn't have, I mean, look, you saw last week, Kenny Pickett can hit the deep strike to him. It's just that, I think right now, Steelers fans would tell you that Kenny Pickett has something. There's something there, and he has some brilliant moments. But there's also times where he makes seemingly bad decisions. But it's in this Matt Canada offense that, just it does some things where it seems like, the old saying would be you don't have answers to the test. Like, the nice thing about Kubiak Shanahan system, or a Tom Brady system, or many other systems when executed properly, is that there's always an answer to the test. Maybe, quarterbacks don't always get to it, and it might be hard to get to the right answer, but there's always an answer to the test somewhere within the play. There's a check down. There's a route that should be man. There's a route that should be zone, like all that stuff. And it just seems like at times Matt Canada's scheme just has no elegance or design or back out or rescue. And it's hard when a guy is a young guy like Kenny Pickett and you're in a scheme like that. The only way I could put it is, like, I knew coaches that were still trying to run like a version of the old run and shoot, a modernized version of the old run and shoot. And sometimes quarterbacks, even veteran quarterbacks in that system, really wouldn't understand what the hell was supposed to happen on any given play, because it'd be like 4 option routes with like 6 different options per route. And there was a whole lot of hindsight coaching going on where, like, oh, well, yeah, you should have done this. Or basically, you should have been a genius in that moment. Oh, yeah, well, that way, you see, that guy was open. You should have been a genius in that moment, as opposed to really having simplified answers to the test. And it doesn't look like Kenny Pickett right now has he doesn't have the answer key sitting out in front of him the way some quarterbacks do. Like, frankly, I think the way CJ is starting to look like he does. I think Kenny Pickett, if he were in a system like the Texans, we'll see how good Bobby Slowick is ultimately at executing it. But if Kenny Pickett had been in San Francisco, or if Kenny Pickett had been in Miami, like with or without those incredible receivers in Miami, I think he'd be looking better and further along than he is right now. I'm not just kissing up to Steelers fans. No, there was a nice one. There's a nice gentleman today. I'm not going to try my Pittsburgh accent, but I was standing in line waiting, and he came up behind me. And he said, "So I gotta go. Do I gotta go like check in at the counter here or something?" I was waiting to board the plane. Like, no, you just wait until your group is called. He's like, okay, because I seen all these people standing up and waiting, and I just didn't know. So I'm in group 3. So where do I go line up? And I'm like, well, this is United. They like to have the other groups go, and then you go. All right, thanks, there, champ. And then he sat down. I told him to go die.
Coach Tomlin has definitely made an impression on me, an impact on me from when I first sat down.
But the guy was like, he must have been like almost 60, and I think it was the first time he'd ever flown, which I found that nice for somebody from Pittsburgh managed to make it out of the muck and now can learn to fly on airplanes. Good job. So this is him answering a question about Mike Tomlin.
As Coach Tomlin has definitely made an impression on me, an impact on me from when I first sat down with him when I was a player. He was the defensive coordinator with the Minnesota Vikings. Like, it's just just his knowledge of the game and his advice to me as a young rookie coming into the league. And then just watching him from afar, you talk about a head coach who has success every year, probably not a losing season. Like, that's what you want to emulate, right? And how he goes about it, right? They play a tough brand of football, physical football, defensive head coach, right? So it's definitely a guy I look up to, and always you see his success and how his players rave about him. And I think that's what sticks out the most, and that's the type of coach that I want to be, where a man who truly cares about the players, right, not just as players but as men. And that's where Coach Tomlin sticks out to me the most, and I have the utmost respect for him.
So Tomlin, I'll play a little clip here. Tomlin was one of 3 coaches that D'Amico will coach against who have won a Super Bowl as a head coach now in his first 4 games. Sean Pendergast likes to do this thing before he bets on a game where he looks at a picture of the head coach and he looks at a picture of the quarterback from each team and thinks like, all right, is this really who I want to go with? And you can think about some of the, if you're looking at Sam Darnold and what's his face there, or whatever, it's a pretty good gauge sometimes of like, okay, how do I really feel about this team? I don't know how I feel about Kenny Pickett right now, but Tomlin is that classic guy. When you look at him, he's got a face that commands respect. There's just a combination of his success in the kind of look on his face. But I think kind of like D'Amico, Tomlin, it's easy to see his edgy side. I think D'Amico doesn't show it as much or as often. But he has that edgy side, but he also has that, you can see him when he's focused, but he also knows how to lighten it up. Like, he very much knows how to lighten it up. Who was this with? Okay, wait, let me look at the depth chart to jog my memory, because I can't remember who he's talking to here. Oh, it's Deontay Johnson, because there's somebody that was on IR. So this is him talking to Deontay Johnson, who's currently on IR.
Look at all this support personnel you got over here. I mean, look at this. Huh? That's all. Hey, whatever you need, I'll get somebody over here fanning the towel on your ass. But you better play like that.
All right, I shouldn't be showing positive propaganda on Mike Tomlin the night before the game. I'll show that nice stuff after the Texans kick his ass. I'll fan your ass, Tomlin. There you go. And then the other night, I'm looking for something to watch on Netflix, and I came across the Pacific, which I guess was in 2010. It's a mini series about the war in the Pacific. I think it's mostly about the Marines. I'm not sure yet, but there was this one scene popped up as part of the trailer for it, and it reminded me of probably like all my this guy who I know, I read very briefly about it, is an actual war hero based on a true story, but he's like every one of my favorite football coaches who ever lived. Was like the perfect blend of complete hard ass, and you're kind of terrified of him, but you can tell he loves you, and he becomes like a father figure to you. And tell me if I'm on the nose with that assessment of this commanding officer from the Marines in World War II.
I want every man in my battalion shaved by 1600. Yes, sir. There ain't nothing much we can do about our dungarees. I figure We're just raggedy-ass Marines. We look this way for a reason.
Yes, sir.
Oh yeah, there's something about that pat on the chest. Oh, I'm going to tear up here. My God, yeah, that's the kind of coach. I had a coach in college, Pete Noyes, who was psychotic in the best way, and he was like the biggest hard ass, and you were terrified of him. But when you played well, he got so excited for you. There was one time before I got there, it was the year before I got there. Or a couple years. He was coaching the offensive line, and he was putting them through a ridiculously hard workout on a hot day. And one of the offensive linemen started puking on the sideline, while the other group of offensive linemen was in, and people were kind of scrambling to figure out who was going to go in for him when the ones went back in. But he got up and he ran back in, and Coach Noyes was on the sideline after the first play going, "I am dancing in your vomit. I am exalting you. I love you, Petey." That guy, he was awesome. I don't know if that sounds as good to you guys, but he was awesome. Let's see. Wow, reminds me of my running backs coach in high school. Let's see. Oh, okay, so directed by Hanks and Spielberg. Great watch. HBO show. It's badass. Yeah, it was. People mentioned it with Band of Brothers, right, as being one of the great war ones. Yeah. Okay, so Pittsburgh is too old school in offense and defense. High schools today run a better scheme than they do. It's tough because they do run. Look, they like to run a whole lot of power. Wow, Rangers 5-0 over the Mariners right now. They like to run a lot of power and counter in like old school football, which the classic downside to that type of football is you got to have some hosses on the offensive line. If you got hosses, and in these days duo and all that, if you got hosses, you can do it. If you don't have hosses, it's just a little too easy as a defense to tee off on it. You can. There's a fun that was like that was an old school nose tackle. Not all that fleet of foot, but one of the fun things for me was because I was a stronger guy and I had a certain level of football IQ. When you're running teams against counter and power and everything, your keys. You see it enough that it's ingrained in your brain, and that when they're running it, it just becomes a sumo wrestling match because who's coming to hit you, the timing of it, all that stuff, and you got answers to the test. So when it's just a measure of brute force versus brute force, and you don't have an advantage schematically, then it's not the best scheme necessarily to be running. You can run play action off of it and everything. But when it's your bread and butter, it can be tough. Let's see. Back to football.
Look at all this support personnel you got over here.
All right, just one more time.
I mean, look at this. Huh? That's all. Hey, whatever you need, I'll get somebody over here fanning the towel on your ass. But you better play like that.
Right.
Okay, so let's see. Against a rookie QB, they'll show zone and play man or vice versa. Tomlin is like 25-4 against rookies. I don't think anybody's denying that Mike Tomlin is a really good coach, but he's also not undefeated against rookies. But right, like show zone and play man, show zone, vice versa. Right, played NFL defense, right? So is he gonna play NFL defense versus? Oh no! Oh crap! He's gonna play NFL defense. I didn't even know that was legal. Of course he's going to play NFL defense. It's all about disguises, baby. Let's see.
For me, in my first 3 games, what I've seen growth from our team, and that's the one thing that I've wanted to see. Right, from our first game to the third game, I've seen growth, I've seen improvement, and that's what you ask for as a coach. Tank has not exceeded any expectations. Tank is the same player you saw in the U of H film. Right? You saw an explosive player, dynamic player who jumped off the tape making those plays. And I don't think any players, like when you draft them, is, who cares where you're drafted. It's about what you do when you get drafted.
Okay, so I'm gonna do a JT O'Sullivan one about Tank Dell here for a second. You know what? Somebody asked this. Hey Seth, you should take call-ins. Helps with viewership. I don't know how to do a call-in. If you want me to bang my brain against that after all my technical limitations, even just trying to get it. Do you guys remember? Ah, damn it. Son of a bitch. Iron Perfect. Not even irony, just the perfect timing. Can't even plug in a damn. Hold on. Son of a bitch. I'm still here. Don't leave. So, like I was saying, do you guys remember how hard it was for me to even get the microphone to work? Now just hold on again. I couldn't even get the microphones to work. And then after a little while, I learned a little bit of editing. Taking phone calls, man. I don't know about that. I pulled the plug out accidentally. I pulled the plug on my own podcast. Is that what did I say? Son of a bitch, I'm still here. Let's see. You could just do a Discord or server. Oh yeah, that would actually probably. It would actually. You know what? I honestly never even thought about it. I haven't done as many of the live reads because, like, they're so glitchy when I do the live reads. Like with the, just even me getting the video to run properly and unplugging things. That for a while I was trying to edit everything and do it in 10 minutes or less. But then I get too ambitious and I try to I've been sitting on this video all week because I wanted to do a freaking Steven Spielberg production. So instead I just ended up doing this. Let's see. Ask Stutes how to do call-ins. Now, are you talking about listeners calling in or just having if I hook up with if I'm hooking up with other people and just live streaming alongside them, I can do that. No problem. It's just the call-ins. Yeah, I blame Michael. Michael, you and your freaking meddling ways. This bastards. Make a Google phone or put the phone on speakerphone. Okay. Mike's book reviews. Mike's the first. Actually, Mike is one of the first guys that I saw that I knew from Twitter that had started a YouTube channel, and it was Mike having success doing fantasy book reviews. Like he's done a boatload of fantasy. So if you're into the fantasy genre, go check out Mike's book reviews. But I remember seeing him grow his channel, and I was impressed with it because he worked his butt off at it. You had to read a lot of books to read a book. Generally, to review a book, you should be reading it, and he reads a lot of books. It's going exactly how it should go live. Yeah. Let's see. Okay, I want to see a Seth and Mike book and football review crossover. I was gonna do. Okay, so real quick. Sorry, everybody. I read On the Road again. Recently, once again, I read On the Road by Jack Kerouac because I read On the Road when I was 17 years old and dropped out of high school for a couple weeks, drove to Florida in my 1982 Mazda GLC, and then realized after a little while that I should probably go back and finish high school. But it was it had a profound impact on me. And it's funny to read a book like that. How many years later now? 30 years later. And realize okay, how selective I was. In the very fact that what's his name there? Sal, the main character. He's not living on the road his entire life. He's actually going back to college and working at times and everything. But in your mind as a teenager, you're like, yeah, I'm just gonna kick it and go all across America and work shitty jobs and basically be a Dharma bum. But you don't. It's like war movies. It's like when you watch a war movie when you're 20. Well, especially when you're a teenager. But when you're young, you watch a war movie and all you see is the glory and all that stuff. And then you watch it when you're a little bit older and you realize oh God, wow. There, but the grace of God go I. That's some hardcore shit, man. Let's see. Channel should grow quick. Yeah, I'm trying to, I don't need it to grow at a blistering pace. I kind of I noticed on Twitter, once you get past a certain number of followers, it becomes a much less enjoyable experience because there's just so much crap hurled at you all the time. So a lot of things that it takes to grow fast on any social media platform also are the things that tend to ultimately make it less enjoyable. So I'm honestly trying to stay somewhat positive on here and learn how to do more editing and learn how to keep my stuff plugged in and not too worry too much about that at the moment. Now, if I get fired from my job or something, then it's balls to the wall, and I will be talking smack to anybody and everybody. And I'll probably start my own OnlyFans or something. I'll do whatever it takes to get ahead. But right now, it's a pretty good balance. So thank you. Oh, so anyway, so is that story part of your college entrance essay? It had to be explained. It had to be explained how I went from like top 5 in my class down to top quartile because I messed up. Like I got F's of it. I got like C's, D's, and F's one whole semester of school my junior year. So I had to pick it up, and luckily I had good standardized tests. Okay, let's get back to football. Oh, wait, take a second to like this video. It helps Seth. Oh, thanks, guys. Yeah, take a second to help me out. Help me. All right, back to football. Okay, so this is JT O'Sullivan. Let me make myself a little bit smaller here. My ego's fine. This is JT O'Sullivan breaking down that Tank Dell touchdown in the second half last week. And I cut this again halfway through because I don't want to completely just mooch off of JT O'Sullivan. But JT O'Sullivan, the QB school.
We've got to do this kind of like baseball turn.
So he's talking about the blue there will be Tank Dell's route. Let me get myself completely off of here. And he's talking about how it wasn't perfect ball placement on this, but like obviously it was a great scheming and reading of the misread, but that Tank Dell really had to adjust to where this ball was thrown.
So we're running and then we turn back in and make the adjustment. It's a really nice job from the wide receiver making this adjustment. It would have been a shame to airball this layup. Great vision from Stroud seeing it. Right, I mean, the corner just at the bottom says, thank you very much. Great turn right there. Nice adjustment.
Yeah, that was really nice. So, okay, I'm going to turn this down a little bit. This is TJ Watt. Just to remind everybody what we're up against tomorrow. TJ Watt, he's always playing left defensive end. So he'll be versus George Fant. And the thing to notice about these highlights is I think these are probably the ones I grabbed that looked the best immediately are about 50-50 run and pass. Like he's got just as many run highlights as he has pass highlights, and his ability to diagnose and read is freakishly like JJ Watt like. And I think in some respects, because he's played outside linebacker and has to be a little bit more cerebral and big picture about stuff, I would say probably better than JJ just by virtue of the position he plays at the diagnosing of what the offense is trying to do. He's got a better field of vision on it, but he's really, really good at it.
Motion man Higgins. Blown up by Watt. What's going to happen from a defensive perspective and then nailing it? TJ Watt just did it.
So like we've seen Texans plays that look a little bit like that with defensive linemen who are less than TJ Watt. So this is why I'm concerned about the negative run plays tomorrow and how that affects the passing game more than I am about the actual pass rush. Because you can scheme pass protection. It's hard to scheme somebody destroying your run plays against somebody destroying your run plays.
Yeah, that was one where he had a full read on the play, and at the snap, he just went ahead and committed to it.
Motion man is Boyd. Burrow steps up, and he's dumped. TJ Watt got a running start. Lost his helmet. Sack of the day for the Pittsburgh defense.
Okay, so this one, if you see that number 67, the guard, he'd pulled out to come block TJ Watt. It didnto work out well. And that's more and more common nowadays. And especially I think when you're trying to scheme pass protection. You saw last week the fullback going in short motion a lot. I think you're going to see that with Beck trying to be a part of not even just chipping, but sometimes combo blocking TJ Watt. It's just you better execute it right, because if you don't,
and they're trying to run what they call a trap pass, meaning the.
Okay, left defense. That's loud, huh? Let me turn that down a little bit. Left defensive end here.
Give to Alvin Kamara to begin the side.
That's another one that's like a little bit JJ Watt like in that I don't think they had a blitz called here. So he's It might look like he's freelancing, except that he expects to make the play.
He's going to go up and under, and then.
Oh, okay, no, this is a different one. This is with Alex Highsmith. So Alex Highsmith, right defensive end, just to see how lethal these guys can be in combination. Alex Highsmith's going to be running a TE game with the defensive tackle on his side. TJ Watt is over as the left defensive end, and they both converge on the quarterback here.
Watch Watt play off of Collins. So Highsmith is going to get the original pressure, and then you got TJ Watt. He's going to.
So this is back to TJ Watt highlights. I've got a little bit of Alex Highsmith later.
30-10. Hubbard under pressure, and he's going to go down. That's
Carr.
Oh, yeah, boy. Okay, so this ghost rush is interesting because it really just came over the last few years where guys
10.
just
Hubbard under
where the hell
pressure, and he's going to go down. That's
So you watch him just he ghosts him like a young Zoomer would ghost somebody on a relationship. They just disappear for a second and then pop back up.
Carr, hands off to Jacobs. And
Guys are pass rushers in general have just gotten a lot smarter and more polished. It doesn't mean that they have to have a broad array of moves or anything. They've just gotten really, really crafty at what they do. And Alex Highsmith, who's the left defensive end, he is crafty. Like, I like watching him play. He's not the natural athlete that TJ Watt is. He's not as silky smooth, but he's just freaking crafty. So like watch him with his hands and watch with his play recognition, like all this stuff. He's lining up at right defensive end. Let me pull this back a little bit. Or right edge rush, I should say. And you guys want me to take Collins, huh? Part of it is okay. Here, we'll watch a little bit more.
Alvin Kamara to begin the side. He's going to go up and under. And
so here's Alex
Highsmith
Highsmith again.
Play off of Collins. So Highsmith is going to get the original pressure, and then you got TJ Watt. He's going to.
This is a 30-10. Hubbard under pressure, and he's going to go down. That's
Carr, hands off to Jacobs.
Okay, so there's the ghost. Oh, okay. So it's just bad editing by me. So Highsmith's making a tackle here, but you don't get to see how he got to it. Okay, there he is. Oh, let me get myself out of here. Okay, so right defensive end, left side of your screen. Spin move. Just watch the different, like the broad array of. After I just said that you don't have to have a broad array, he's got a broad array and he uses it well, but he uses a spin move really effectively, but intelligently. He's not spinning himself out of plays. 14 sacks last year, I believe. Here he is, right defensive end. Speed rush, strip sack. There's a lot of chop to swim or chop to rip. Oh, they showed that one a bunch of times, huh? Casey Hayward. Okay, then I chopped it up after this. All right, right defensive end. Spin, stymied spin, turned it into a bull rush, and then ended up getting the wash on that one. So, like, that was more just like of a tough, gritty play. Like, that's actually a bad spin move, except that he's got so much strength and power that he keeps compressing the pocket. Like that one, I don't even know what. Like that one, he starts on. He didn't even have a good body position to start with, and he didn't actually have great hands or anything. He just. I rewound it a little bit. Sorry, guys. And that's just a nice play. He shed the hell out of that dude. Look how frustrated the offensive lineman was. All right, stand up defensive end to the right. Oh, okay. Did you see what he did there? Did he do that to Mac Jones in this offensive tackle? He faked like he was dropping off into coverage. Oh, man. Don't do this, Dawson Deculus. Please. Oh, please don't do this. Okay, watch. He's right there. He's even split out a little bit, so it looks like he's going to be dropping off onto the number 2 receiver there. Steps off. Oh, it wasn't even a good fake. Then watch the left tackle. Oh, and the running back just leaves him completely. Oh. You fucking idiots. Yes. Oh, wait a second. I don't want Alex Highsmith to be doing well. Just don't. Texans, don't bite on that, please. Oh, it's the best. Oh, it's the best. Okay, so you can line up off ball, hit it like a normal off ball linebacker, like Jadeveon Clowney style. Stand up, nice hands, falls back in for the play. They got their hands full. Here he's off ball again. Like that, like it's no big secret. It's TJ Watt, it's Alex Highsmith, and the rest of them are pretty good at rushing the passer too. Like they're a headache. Just chasing down from the backside. This is like, you love this guy. This is the guy you want on your team. So as far as Will Anderson, I want to do it. I keep trying to do a video on Will Anderson, and I keep running out of time. Will Anderson is second in the league right now in pass rush win rate, which means that the percentage of times that he's beating his pass block within 2.5 seconds, his is like 33%, and he's the second highest in the league. I think that sometimes that can be a little bit of a wonky stat. You know, TJ Watt's in the top 20 right now, but it's 3 weeks in, and they tend to settle in like one. I think that Baltimore game especially was really good for Will Anderson. Will has been hurt a little bit just by, in terms of sack production and QB hits, by the fact that we've played 3 teams that are all in the top 10 fastest at getting rid of the ball. Gardner Minshew, Lamar Jackson this year, and obviously, well, Trevor Lawrence is like second fastest behind Tua at getting rid of the ball. So last week there were a lot of good pass rushes where you're not going to get to the quarterback because guys are getting rid of the ball so quickly. Kenny Pickett hangs on to it longer. So if these guys can win at the rate they have been versus a not primed, not like a classic Pittsburgh Steelers offensive line, then they should have some success versus Kenny Pickett. That's really what it's all going to come down to in my mind, is the Texans pass rush versus Kenny Pickett and forcing him into errors, and then the Texans offense and how they handle the Steelers pass rush. The Texans as a team right now, their strength is 2 things, really. One is CJ Stroud and those receivers that all of a sudden are playing way above what people's expectations were. And then with Jimmy Ward and Jalen Petrie, their ability to create turnovers and hopefully with a good pass rush up front. The pass rush is, I think those advanced metrics are a little bit ahead of where the Texans actually are, but there is something there. There's some real potential there. They just got to maybe turn it up one little notch. But then on the back end, now with Jimmy Ward and Jalen Petrie back, when they do play zone, hopefully it's a lot more harassment of guys who do catch the ball, a lot more intimidation into more gator armed passes like we saw out of the Gambler there last week. And it's going to be a good challenge. It's the Steelers, for those of you that don't follow this type of stuff, the Steelers are only 3-point favorites. I mean, that's as visitors, they're 3-point favorites, which means, at home they'd be a 6-point favorite. But it's not a classic Steelers team. And like any Steelers fan who's trying to invoke the steel curtain or something is kind of a casual. Like the actual Steelers fans know and understand where this Steelers team needs to improve. And they're looking at this game like, okay, well, this is, in their minds, this is all right. If you're the Steelers and who the Steelers usually are, and if Kenny Pickett's going to be somebody, then take the hell care of the Houston Texans. It's not as simple as like, oh yeah, they're rolling and they're going to roll over any team in the league. They've got some challenges, and the Texans are at that point where like they could take a step forward. There's a certain cachet to beating the Steelers, just like there's a certain cachet to beating the Raiders or beaten the Packers or any of those old guard NFL teams. And there's a certain cachet to beating Mike Tomlin, who somebody pointed out is a pretty formidable record versus rookies. So I'm excited about tomorrow. I'm excited about the Astros potentially. I don't know. Are the Pirates? Where's the Pirates playoff situation? You can answer me that. Okay. Let me take some questions though before we do much more. If CJ is comp to Burrows, then it might be a long afternoon. Oh yeah. Let's see. Didn't Burrow make the Super Bowl unlike Pickett? Trippy. Oh, when the lights were off there. Yeah. Let's see. Sorry, I'm not going to get all these. Everyone remember when the live is over to come drop a comment. It helps the algorithm. Oh yeah, please do. Thank you for that. If you drop a comment, including, honestly though, with all smack talk aside, I am curious. I'm curious about what Steelers fans feel about Matt Canada and like what the solution is. If let's say you fired Matt Canada several games in, is there like somebody laying in wait on that staff right now that people actually do like? Because this is the thing, man. It's always this way with Cowher. I guess it wasn't this way as much with Cowher, but with Tomlin and his offensive coordinators, and then also like how those offensive coordinators relate to Ben Roethlisberger. That was always the story. I always enjoyed watching that from afar because you're always teaching, an old dog how to do new tricks with Ben Roethlisberger, and he seemed to latch on with it and run with it at times. But the Matt Canada stuff and then everything that Roethlisberger had to go through 2 years ago, it just seems like, and I know that people are really happy with the new management up there. It just, oh shit, I forgot to mention. Oh, Kendrick Green. So Kendrick Green, who the Texans signed to replace Kenyon Green at left guard, has now started 2 games for the Texans and has actually been better than I thought he was going to be. He was really, really rough in Pittsburgh. I mean, I went back to 2 years ago, his rookie year, when they wanted him to play center, to play center with poor Ben Roethlisberger. I know, but poor Ben Roethlisberger, as aging football players go. And he was just, I went back and I wanted to look at least his good games. So I went back and I found a couple of his best games with the Steelers from his rookie year, and they were not very good games. He was really getting his butt handed to him. The last couple of weeks, he's had some rough snaps, but he's also I think last week, especially as a pass blocker, it was better than I thought it was going to be with him playing guard, especially because he's an athletic guy, but he's got really short arms. He looks a lot smaller than his listed weight on film, but it wasn't as bad as he had looked in Pittsburgh. So honestly, if you really want to stick to Steelers fans tomorrow, I would say hope that Kendrick Green has an awesome game because nobody in Pittsburgh, people in Pittsburgh despised him. I made a thumbnail of Kendrick Green looking off into the distance, and then with the ghost of Kevin Green, and then an image that looked like a ghost of Mean Joe Green, but that's not, whatever. Standing in front of the old stadium. What was the old stadium called? Was it before Three Rivers? I can't remember the name of the old stadium. And underneath it, I said, "A legacy of Green," with a little apostrophe E, because those other two guys had E's in it. Just to troll Steelers fans because they despise him so much. But the biggest troll ever would be to run for 175 yards, all to the left side, all behind Kendrick Green. That would make me so happy. And it would also make me feel that I hadn't published the video that I did on Kendrick Green and how much I disapproved of the signing, because my God, I swear, if you'd seen him playing in Pittsburgh, there's nobody in Pittsburgh that should have wanted to give him another chance. He needed a change of scenery. One of the theories, and I think this is a good and fair one, is that look, Kendrick Green might do better in a team that's more zone blocking oriented because he's more of an athletic guy and not this gap scheme power guy. So it might be as simple as that, even though the Texans have mixed up the run game a bunch. So, well, they also haven't run the ball well. So look, take everything I said with a grain of salt. The Texans have been awful at running the football. If you're a Steelers fan and you're coming here and looking for information, just know that Singletary is averaging 3.5 yards per carry. Dameon Pierce is averaging 2.5 yards per carry. The third leading rusher on the team is CJ Stroud, who though he's more athletic than people wanted to give him credit for, it should not be the third leading rusher on your team. He's third leading rusher, tied for highest yards per carry at 3.5. So that part's been bad. And again, that's why the Alex Highsmith and TJ Watt plays versus the run concern me as much as anything they do versus the pass, because it's been a little bit ugly these days. Let's see. I love Kendrick Green as a person, but he lives in the QB's lap. Yeah, he's real scrappy, isn't he? Like, and I say that in not a completely like backhanded tussling the hair of somebody that you don't think is that good. Like, usually I don't like guys that jump on the pile a lot and everything. But like, I feel like with him, it's just he genuinely understands his limitations and that he's got to do every single thing he can to to be clear, I don't mind it if guys jump on the pile after they beat the crap out of somebody. I don't like the guys who get the crap beat out of them and then try to act like a hard ass because they jump on the pile. I especially don't like it because there's football coaches who are dumb enough to buy into that stuff and like draft them first round. It's crazy. It's nuts. Yeah, it does. He looks really small for a guard. It's weird because he's listed at like 6'4", 315. But when you look at him, he's got really, really short arms. Like if you look at the spider chart of him and like when it shows like the percentiles for everything, the part for arm length and maybe hand size is incredibly small. And it shows up when he plays. So like he has to make up for it by being super aggressive with his feet and like get everywhere with his feet instead of his hands. And he does that. I think he's doing a better job of it here in Houston than he was it was just his rookie year. And he was trying to play center, which is not an easy thing to do your rookie year. So like, I don't know. I'm intrigued by him. I'd prefer not to have to be watching him make this transition the same way I would have preferred that Kenyon Green wasn't still having a hard time making a transition, but that's where we are right now. So keep saying I'm going to leave, and then people keep coming to the stream. Let's see. CJ isn't a runner. He'll go through every option unless he's flushed out. Yeah. Oh, no. I think the only thing about, though, too, is trying to run against Pittsburgh will get him hurt. Again, like, I'm not trying to say this in a cocky way or anything. This just isn't the same Steelers defense that we'd seen for several decades. It's just not. The pass rush is there. Like TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith would look just fine lining up on a defense that had Greg Lloyd and Kevin Green or any of those studs from the 90s on through now. But it's just and then offensively, I mean, you get Deontay back at some point. George Pickens is awesome, but I just don't know how much it's. I'm not going to get here nostalgic about it or anything, but I like Tomlin a lot, and I think he'll have a chance to ride this thing out. But they've got some rebuilding to do. Like, I'm not saying rebuilding like they're a two-win football team, you know what I mean? But to get back to that team where they're genuinely threatening every year, I have a hard time looking at that team this year and seeing it happen. Without denying that they have some very good individual players. It feels honestly a little bit like the Texans had gotten to a point where they had a few really, really good individual players, but they had a poor middle class. Like they were all like, so a few really, really awesome players, and then too many slightly below average to below average players balancing it out. And that's where I think there's an opportunity for the Texans. But it's like it's Mike Tomlin. It's a Kenny Pickett that's making progress, looked a lot better last week than he had before, and perhaps an offensive line that'll start to congeal and come together. Really, a lot of it just comes down to Bobby Slowick scheming against that pass rush and trying to do everything you can on CJ Stroud's side to get the ball out quickly, selectively take shots downfield through play action and max protection. Do a lot of things they did last week, just, up in your game versus some still very opportunistic defense that the Steelers will play. Let's see. Yeah, Minka seemed to make the news with a QB hit. Yeah, all right. Okay. I don't know what you mean. Like, yeah, like everybody's capable of making play. I'm not like I said, they've got some really good individual players. I just don't know, like if you're sitting here saying that the the steel curtain. I feel like you're ignoring. Like honestly, you're spitting in the face of the genuinely great Steelers defenses. You're basically calling Jack Lambert a little sissy. Okay, that's what you're doing, and I don't think that's what you want to be doing. Okay, because Jack Lambert's grandson was on here earlier. Yep, I'm gonna tell him. Seriously though, like, subscribe. I'm just joking about the Jack Lambert stuff and everything. And have a good one. Go Astros. And let's reconvene tomorrow night. Also, KHOU, I do Sports Extra on Sunday night. Usually it's on around like 10:30, 11. So it's a long day on Sundays for me, but hopefully I'm doing it with the taste of sweet victory.